actually. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Lou TV. Little Friday night action. I'm going to be talking about Saturday nights or Saturday's games, including some, the night games, the early games, the mid games, the in between the mid and late games. I'm here with Andrew. What's up, dude? You made it to the second round of the Fantasy Elite tournament, didn't you?
I did, dude, and I think that's where that journey's gonna end. Just seeing how things are going so far. I mean, there's still time, but I don't have Taysom Hill, and I think that's all I really have to say at this point.
Dude, the quarterbacks though in yesterday's games went nuts.
They
Like
did.
I had Halliday, I had Dylan Thompson, and I still lost because Kenny Hill went nuts, obviously, and it just was crazy.
Yesterday was a fun slate for sure.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about this. The slates tomorrow, there's a lot of good games. It's just going to be tough to like find players that are going to be affordable. Like Brett Hundley is 30K tomorrow,
Agree. We,
so
we got we got to tell Grant to make his pricing a little more like consistent with the industry, a little softer. You know what I mean?
not even like give me just like a little softness. I mean, I'm not saying to go like some of these other sites like super soft, but I feel like I'm going to be. I mean, I would never do it because I'm not dumb and I'm not a UVA fan, but I almost feel like you have to like consider a guy like a UVA quarterback just because. What else would you do?
I mean, we won't tell anyone you said that.
Yeah, I'm not going to do it, so don't worry about it. We have four different slates to talk about, so we'll just jump right into it. The first one being this slate with UCLA, UVA, Ohio State, Navy, App State, and Michigan, and Western Michigan and Purdue. Which one of these games do you think is like the one that you're going to target the most, based off of I don't know high scoring or competitiveness, or I don't know pricing or anything like that you see early on?
Um, it's tough, man. I don't know if I'm gonna necessarily target any one game specifically, uh, partially due to the nature of how elite drafts work, and also just because like we were saying, the pricing seems to have smartened up a little bit. So if you're gonna if you're gonna try and go with a big player or two from a game, then if his pals are also solid players, you might not be able to fit them all into your roster. So I think you got to really um, be dynamic during your drafts and not be just stuck into like one particular on particular guys. You really get this slate's definitely tough. I think that you're gonna have to try and seek out values based upon like what you do early in your rounds, and then kind of go from there. Like specifically, what I'm getting at is like if you put your down on Brett Hundley, that's gonna really kind of cut you off from going after some other guys later on in the draft. Um, all the quarterbacks are pretty much priced up pretty high. I don't know. How do you feel about it?
With the quarterbacks being priced up so high, you either have to like go with a guy like JT Barrett and still have to go value, or go big like you're saying, go Hundley, and then just take some really big
Right.
risks. Um, like we kind of talked in pre-show, like UCLA. I think UCLA is going to score a ton of points on UVA, and I think they're like 21-point favorites, and the total is like right around 60. So that Vegas is kind of looking at that as well. But it's almost like you have to, you think typically UCLA doesn't have one receiver that's going to be big. Like Shaq Evans was a good receiver for them, but even then he didn't put up like crazy numbers last year. So you almost have to just like take a chance and hope that one of these guys like Lucien or God, what's his name?
Bowler, Peyton.
Yeah, Peyton have big games. Like if their prices are good enough where they can go like 6 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown and still be fine. You're just not going to have some of those huge games, I think. I think it's going to be a lower scoring slate. Just in general, I think the whole day will be lower scoring. Uh, so I'm pretty much going to be looking at this UCLA offense, and I think a little bit of Michigan even too, to be honest. And I'm not even a huge Michigan fancy guy.
So
Um,
when you see a slate like this on Elite, where all the studs are priced pretty accurately in terms of that they're priced like studs, highly priced, and you're not going to be able to just kind of get whoever you want. I feel like this makes it even more important that you don't that when you take a guy who's lower priced, you really can't make him like because everybody's gonna have a limited amount of studs, and it's probably gonna come down to those lower priced guys that are gonna decide the matchups.
Yeah, and I think one thing you should do is instead of like going for like a guy that's just going to be average at like I don't know, like a Tyler Croft type where you know his upside is capped at like 12 or 13 points. Like I think you should just really go for a guy that could go a lot bigger. You know what I'm saying? But save you the extra 3 or 4K. Does that make sense?
Yeah, buddy.
But I think first pick. I mean, if I'm picking first, I think I would pretty much guarantee Dontre Wilson is the first pick for me. He's like 5.2K here, and I think he's going to be given. I mean, obviously, he's going to have more of the opportunities to score with Braxton Miller hurt, but he's such a dynamic player that JT Barrett. I'm sure they're going to be trying to get him some easy passes early on and some easy type play calling, and I think Dontre Wilson really falls into that. Do you see him as like your first pick, and if not, who would you go with?
I think I go Barrett, man, because if I don't go Barrett, the quarterbacks around his pricing are basically Danny Etling, Cameron Bryant's a little lower. I don't really have faith in them. Zach Terrell on Western Michigan. I don't know that much about Western Michigan, but I don't think that's something I'll be targeting. I mean, and then there's Brett Hundley and Keenan Reynolds, Devin Gardner, who are priced a little higher. So I think getting Barrett gives you solid ground to work with while not necessarily restricting you going forward. Granted, he's somewhat of an unknown, but I feel pretty confident about his floor in terms of points.
Yeah, and hey, Kenny Hill was an unknown too. Remember, like I think Grant was pretty much talking about how he really didn't like him. Not to be calling out Grant. Grant had a lot of good calls in yesterday's game, like Leonte Carew and those Washington State guys. But Kenny Hill came out of nowhere and dominated. So I can see that I'm sorry, yeah, that JT Barrett pick more just because look at the guys around him. Like who would you, like you said, who would you go that's cheaper? And if you don't get him, you got to get two quarterbacks to begin with. So I can definitely see that. He'd probably be my second pick at worst. Looking at some of these other guys, Michigan. I was talking about some guys I want to target. Devin Funchess has a really good target or the really good price there, 12K, and then Derek Green, who I'm typically not a fan of. Like last year, never impressed me, but Vegas has the projected score at like 42 to 7. Well, Derek Green is the running back. You would consider him getting the ball a ton in this game, and he's at 10K, so why not? Do you see any guys in Michigan you want to really target or no?
Yeah, I mean, I like both. I like both those picks for sure. Who ended up? Do we know who ended up sewing up the number two wideout job? Was it your boy Freddie Canteen, or did someone else take that?
Well, the one guy sucker punched a dude and he's gone. But I think Freddie Canteen is the guy that Freddie Canteen is the guy. Well, the second guy.
He's minimum price, no?
Yeah, if he's not, he's at 5.8, so he's right there as well. Like I would consider him as well. Like I'm not even, and honestly, I would consider Devin Gardner.
Yeah.
I just think that like they're going to score a ton of points. Derek Green ain't going to score 3 touchdowns on the ground. Okay. And Devin Gardner seems like a lock for at least 2 touchdowns. Like a lock for 2 touchdowns, a pretty safe bet for 3. So unless you really want to pay 6K more and get a guy like Hundley who might, share the wealth and cost you a pretty penny, I think Devin Gardner is a guy you really have to look at besides JT Barrett. I mean, what quarterback would you go with other like of the higher price guys?
So between Hundley, Reynolds, and Garner, I mean, I can't see any way I go Reynolds just because his career seems to basically have been to this point. He'll show out against like the lower tier guys, and then in bigger games against better opponents, he just hasn't come through in the past. So, and I mean, his price is pretty prohibitive. Like you said about Gardner, I mean, 24 is not in relative to all the other pricing in the slate. That's not prohibitive for Gardner. Hundley's tough. I mean, you really have to find probably 4 close to minimum price guys that you like in order to fit Hundley in, and your second quarterback's probably going to be pretty poor as well.
Yeah, I feel like you say that about Huntley. I feel like we can get there though. Like I feel like we can find these. Now that we're talking more and more about it, I start to see more guys that are minimum priced. It's going to be kind of risky, and it's probably not the. Maybe this is like the three-man team approach you should do because I can't imagine rostering 6 total quarterbacks in the slate of the 8, which is what you're going to have to do when you're playing this. But if you get Canteen, if you get Dontre Wilson, if you get who's that UCLA receiver you said that had a lot of buzz but wasn't technically a top 2 receiver for them?
Eldridge Massington.
Yeah, Eldridge Massington is 5K, and like you said, a lot of buzz around him. And honestly, I see UCLA winning by like 50 points against UVA.
Right. Yeah, I
so
agree.
at that point, they're going to put the backup in, and if it's the fourth quarter, they're not going to just run every single play.
Mm-hmm.
So you can look to maybe see some targets, worst case scenario, in the fourth quarter. And Jordan Payton's 8K and Akeem Hunt's 8K. But if you do that, you have to kind of say, I'm not going to really get anybody above, in the 11 to 15K range at all.
Right.
But that kind of takes out who I think is probably my favorite receiver is Corey Davis, a guy I have on pretty much all my teams tomorrow on like Fantasy Aces and DraftKings and stuff. He's at 15K, a guy I like against Purdue. Purdue's so bad. So bad. By the way, when like Purdue and Illinois and Indiana and Rutgers all start playing each other, it's going to be like fantasy heaven.
It's going to be great, man. Purdue's paying Western Michigan like 800 G's to come and beat them in this game, too. It's great.
Is Purdue the favorite?
I don't know, but they're the home team, and they're paying them to come play them.
I can't imagine paying Western Michigan to come when you're Purdue.
Yeah, exactly.
And 800K is a lot of money. That's a lot of money. But anyways, with 4 slates going, let's kind of like name some of these other guys that I starred or favorited for my games tomorrow. Ezekiel Elliott, I guess you said he had a surgery a couple weeks ago, but he's good to go. He's at 13K, and I think with that offense with Braxton Miller going.
I think just in light of what we saw with Mike Davis yesterday, if you have Elliott on your teams, you want to monitor that close to kickoff and just make sure it's fine because, he had full-blown wrist surgery a few weeks ago.
Yeah, and I think what you should do, not that, Ezekiel Elliott and Dontre Wilson are the same running backs, but I would 100% try to have both on the same team. Like, if you're going to pick Elliott, make sure you have Dontre Wilson because if Elliott goes down, then Wilson's stock goes up, don't you think?
I do.
And then another guy there, Darevon Chance from, is it Western Michigan? I forget. Yeah, Western Michigan, and then the running back Akeem Hunt from Purdue. Derek Green I mentioned at 10K. UCLA receivers Jordan Payton. I guess you could rule out Lucien as well. Freddie Canteen, just some guys there. But it should be interesting in this one. The more you talk about it, the more I kind of felt more comfortable with some of these guys. But it's really hard. I think I'm now leaning towards getting a guy like J.T. Barrett first because you have to roll 2 quarterbacks, and this just seems really, really tough to do. So, by the way, do you after looking at this, do you have a favorite slate, like in terms of just games?
No. What? Not. I see that there's that slate with Uga in it, so I might have a chance to own Gurley. So for now, I'll say that's my favorite.
Of course, it's your favorite. I was leading you on to talk about how you're a Gurley man. I'm a Gurley man too. This next slate's the West Virginia, Alabama, Rice and Notre Dame, Cal Northwestern, and Arkansas Auburn. This is an interesting one. A couple underpriced players here. Guys like Chris Harper, I think, is underpriced at 11.7K. And Cameron Artis-Payne, who's probably one of my top picks, he's at 10.6K. And then, with it being a small slate, obviously you have to consider Arkansas's running backs, Alex Collins and Jonathan Williams. Do you see anybody yourself that is underpriced?
So I haven't actually made any attempt to confirm the weather for tomorrow's game, but you see, I forget who was on Twitter. I think that's Sports Porch CFF guy was talking about how last year when it was pouring rain and Cal was playing Oregon, they pulled Goff like a quarter in because he couldn't throw the ball in the rain because his hands are so small. And there's like, I think there's projected rain for that game tomorrow in Cal Northwestern, which I mean, just
I saw that. What do you remember that game?
yeah, it was an absolute monsoon, right?
Yeah. I mean,
That's the game
no
where
offense to
D'Anthony.
the guy. No offense to the guy, but I think he's trying a little too hard with that tweet, don't you?
I guess.
I mean, come on, like it was a freshman receiver playing like top rank, one of the top 10 teams in the country, Oregon. Well, I think it was on the road, uh, and Cal. And honestly, I remember watching it because I think I might have had some action with Goff, and he gets pulled early, and you're all like, we're all just sitting here like, what just happened? Like, why does he get pulled? It wasn't that bad. So sorry, I'm not buying into that at all. Like,
Okay.
that's, I mean, no offense to the guy, and no offense to you for repeating it. Sure, it's considerable. I'm not going to pick Jared Goff, like just because I don't have any. I mean, I'm just not really into it that much. But come on, like saying that he's got small hands in this monsoon of a game he sucked in and got like, come on, Andrew. I feel like he's trying hard.
Yeah, man. I mean, but you gotta look for any edge you can, I think. And if there's pouring rain in a game, you might shy away from that game to begin with, from a passing standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to get plenty of opportunities. So hopefully, uh, I mean, I like Chris Harper. So I mean, I don't have anything against Goff. I'm not super high. I'm not super low on him. I think some interesting price quarterbacks here. Like Golson's the highest quarterback. Would you have thought that Golson would be the highest quarterback for this action?
No, I mean, I won't be taking him.
Yeah, and then you know who's tempting is Nick Marshall. How does that make you feel, Nick Marshall?
I don't think I could talk myself into it, dude.
You don't think so?
Now, how long do you think? At what point in the game do you think he comes in?
I'm looking at like one quarter. I'm thinking one
Yeah, I think so
quarter.
too.
If it if it was if it was like a huge deal, I feel like they would have said like the whole game or at least a half. Like I just think he didn't do it because he didn't want to get roasted on Twitter for only making it a quarter. At 13K, I can get on Nick Marshall's.
That's true. It is only 13K. What do you think of
The
Simeon?
only problem is like Simeon. That's tough because he doesn't have like a standout receiver that really like makes him a
Yeah,
strong play.
but he's facing.
Like I feel like if you're a good quarterback, you need a guy that is just a strong play on like to catch the ball, don't you?
Against most teams probably, but this is Cal.
That's that's true. I forget that Cal is like the worst team ever defensively.
Yeah.
Second worst team ever behind Rutgers. My bad. Um, yeah, with it being a small slate, I can imagine Simeon being a good play, and he's only 16K, so I could do that. Uh, Here's a guy that I want to hear your thoughts on. I know it's a big spread, and I know that they're going to get killed, but would you look at Dreyfus Jackson tomorrow?
That's such a Zach question. He knows everything about all these guys who we wouldn't even care about. But no, I mean Notre Dame's D is historically pretty good, right? What's his pricing? Let's see, 8K. Damn. I think you have to look at that. Um, Especially considering if you want to. I mean, there's a lot of good players who are priced up in the slate that if you want to own them, then I mean you probably have to consider someone like Dreyfus. What's your opinion on it?
I would do it, man, at 8K. I mean,
Yeah,
he wouldn't be one of my top picks, but he would definitely be a guy that like fourth, fifth, sixth pick I have. I would easily consider him.
yeah,
I mean, it's not like Notre Dame is some powerhouse defense. Manti Te'o's gone, so it's not like they have some crazy, Alabama defense. Like you could put Clint Trickett at like 5K against Alabama, and I probably still wouldn't touch him. You know,
What do you think of All right, I'm kind of thinking Kenny Lawler is one of the better value plays potential. What do you have thoughts on him?
I just was looking at him, man, at 8K and
Yeah,
that high passing offense. I
yeah.
can get behind it just because he had some really,
He had
really
some
good games
games last
last
year
year.
too. Yeah,
I know that Harper's their number one and Treg's is technically their number two, but it doesn't. I don't think like that's a situation where being a three is a bad thing because they always run three wide
agreed. And
and
I
they
mean,
throw 40 to 45 times. So
right. I mean,
it's like,
Trags has pretty much no big playability also, and while Harper does, they're both smaller guys. While Laura's like he's like 6'3". I mean, I like his chances to score.
yeah, I do too. I think that's I mean, at Lawler at 8K, I would definitely really, really consider there. Let's see, did we find anybody? Did we have anybody here that's like 5K ish that jumps out? I haven't seen anybody so far. There's a bunch of like receivers for Northwestern down here, like Christian Jones and I think Tony Jones, or is it Tony? Is it
Christian
Tony
Jones,
Jones?
the one who tore his ACL, right?
Yeah, 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 he is. I was wondering. I was trying to figure out which one of them was the one that was out.
Yeah.
Uh, what's the Tony? I forget the Northwestern receiver. His name is
No, it's
Tony.
Tony Jones. He's pretty cheap.
Yeah,
He's
there
nine
it is.
and a half.
What'd you say?
He's 9.5. That's not bad.
That's not bad. Yeah, and see, I just with Alabama playing, it just for me, it almost takes West Virginia all the way out. Like I know Mario Alford's a good player, but he's like such a small little guy. I don't think this is really his kind of game. Like I feel like West Virginia's only opportunity to get like big plays, big points is going to be like a deep ball or something, and that's definitely not his game at all. Uh, Instead, a receiver, I don't really typically go Sammy Coates, but Sammy Coates at 13K is not too bad, pending who you go at quarterback and how much money you
No,
have.
it's not bad.
Uh, Not bad at all. And you know who I really like in this game, this Northwestern game, but I'm not going to touch probably because of his price, is Trayvon Green.
Yeah, he's very, very expensive. I would feel
That's
really
what
good
play.
if I managed to get both Corey Grant and Cameron Hardest.
What's Corey Grant's price?
Right. I mean, basically, so you can get Trayvon Grant for 16K or Cameron Hardest paying like you're saying at 10.6, and Corey Grant is like 8 and change, I think.
Yeah.
So that's like 19K for the two of them. I mean, that looks a lot better than Trayvon Green.
Yeah, Trayvon Green.
And I mean,
I feel like we're a little off sync here, Andrew. By the way, my not only is my
it's
computer
cool. We'll
like
get through it.
messing up and it's ridiculously hot, but the internet just feels like me and you. Like whenever I'm talking to Zach, I feel like we're good, and then you jump in the equation, Andrew, and you always mess it up. Um, I'm trying to send out a tweet here, but oh man, what a day! By the way, I had one heck of a day. So I'm kind of struggling here to finish off the night. The Boise game last night really
But
got me.
that's a cool thing to go to, dude. Even though, I mean, overall it wasn't a great game. If you can go to the kickoff game to start off your college football year, I think you gotta do it.
Dude, and the crazy part was I've never been to the Georgia Dome where they closed off the top section. They didn't let anybody in the top actual section. It was crazy.
Really? That's strange.
It was almost embarrassing. Only 32,000 people were at the game. I had I had two extra tickets, and I literally was walking around to people like, "Hey, I have two tickets. Do you have any?" And they're like, "I already have them," or "No, I'm not going." I could not give away tickets, literally.
So I think the best way to summarize this slate is I don't think there's a bunch of absolute clear like first couple rounds worth of guys, but there's maybe 10 guys that you could subjectively rank any which way as top 10 guys. Like I think if me and you put together our top 10 best values on the slate, we might have the same 10 players, but they'd probably be ranked fairly differently. Like there's a bunch of pretty good values, and I don't think that most of them necessarily jump out from each other.
Yeah, I was almost gonna finish the sentence there. Like the 10 guys that I really would target, but it's not technically going to be guys that really jump out. Like Alex Collins and Jonathan Williams are guys that I have no problem with. That's a combo that could probably get you 2 touchdowns, but to somebody else, Alex Collins might not be a guy that they want to touch at all. Like if they have respect to Auburn's
Yeah.
defense enough. So it's kind of a perspective of how you're looking at it. One thing to note is Jordan Taylor is questionable, I believe, for Rice. Have you seen that as well?
No, I didn't know that. That's definitely worth noting though.
Jordan, yeah. So
That guy's good.
because he's got a tempting price at 9K, so make sure that if you do want to, for some reason, test fate, make sure you're Twitter searching and making sure that he's in or out. Because I saw just a day or two ago that he was questionable. Real quick, before we get to this next slate, Blake Sims. Any chance you would roll Blake Sims against West Virginia? Because West Virginia should get some points put on him.
Uh, when I first looked at his price, I thought that it was very high, just because he's so high up on the list. But no, like none of these QBs are so prohibitively priced. It's strange how everybody's pretty modestly priced. So I think I want to roll him out. I might consider it. The the other guy I was going to bring up that we haven't mentioned yet is Greg Bryan at minimum price at on Notre Dame.
You'll have to
I think.
fill me in on Greg Bryant.
I mean, I wouldn't say that he's necessarily a workhorse, but a highly touted recruit who was in the mix for their starting job. Um, and I think even if he gets 10, 15 carries against Rice, he could put up some pretty good points, and he's minimum priced.
Yeah, so he's part of that like Notre Dame 2 or 3 guys that they're looking at, like Folston and Cam McDaniel, right?
Right.
He said Brian at 5K. Yeah, I would take a look at it. I mean, if you wanted to roll, I mean, Notre Dame should put up some points on Rice. So if you wanted to roll some of these higher priced guys, maybe you want to go TJ Yeldon and just get a safe option there, or maybe you want to roll an Amari Cooper, which is risky in my opinion. Then you need a 5K guy, and I'd totally be behind it because talking to Hude, who's the guy who went to Atlantis. I don't know if you heard about it at all, Andrew, but the guy from Blue Dogs that went to Atlantis for that DraftKings tournament.
Okay.
I've talked to him about Notre Dame's running back situation, and he's pretty much said they're all like the 3 of them are pretty solid, but one of them is going to eventually break through, and nobody really knows at this point who's going to be the guy. Kind of like Oklahoma's running back situation a little bit.
Yeah.
How I guess for a little while I think was it Mixon, but I think he just got in trouble, didn't he?
Yeah, we're not going to hear from him for a while.
Yeah, so Keith, what was that? Was that like a sarcastic comment because he just probably going to jail for murder or something?
It's not that quite that bad, but I think he beat up a girl or something.
Gotcha. Beat up some girl. That's terrible. So yeah, it's one of those situations where not really sure who's the guy. I mean, at 5K, I certainly wouldn't pick Cam McDaniel at 13K, and
Right.
Folston is a little more intriguing at 11.5. I would consider him like towards the end of the draft kind of thing. But I think Bryant's a guy you should consider because he's one of those 3 guys, and maybe he sneaks in there, gets a touchdown on a short yardage play. But besides that, I don't really see a whole lot there. I mean, Trayvon Green too much. Like I said, Sammy Coates, Harper, Artist Payne, and Grant, 2 of my favorite guys.
What do you think of Derrick Henry for the slate?
For the slate, not bad at all. I think what is he, 13K?
Yeah.
And my fear though is that Blake Sims throws like 2 touchdown passes, and then TJ Yeldon gets a touchdown. The Bama defense scores a touchdown, and then all of a sudden they kind of forget about running the ball with Kenyon Drake. Or not Kenyon Drake, Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
The good thing is Kenyon Drake is out, so that means that Henry's going to get a little bit longer leash than usual because the depth isn't quite as there,
Mhm.
So I don't mind it. He's probably one of those later round picks for me, not someone I would try to target really early on at all. Uh, but 13K for a guy that's really a beast, just no guaranteed term, I guess technically in terms of what he's going to get carries wise. Um, so you want to move on to this? What is this? South Dakota State and Oregon slate.
You want to do that, or you want to do UGA?
Oh yeah. I get confused at which one is the next one. Yeah, let's go to UGA. Georgia, Clemson, Florida State, Oklahoma State, Fresno State, and USC, and Wisconsin, LSU. This is the prime game slate. Some really, really good games. Thankfully, I get out of work at 5:30. If I rush home, I can be there in time to watch the UGA game, and then do the nightcap for the Wisconsin and FSU games. Not fantasy wise, and take out the Georgia game. Are you more intrigued by the Wisconsin LSU game or the FSU and Oklahoma State game?
So it's just those two.
Yeah, because
I don't think there's
obviously you
any.
care about.
Yeah, of course. I don't think there's any intrigue to that FSU game. It's just how many touchdowns FSU is going to win by. So
Yeah,
I think there's a ton of interesting storylines though in the Wisconsin LSU game. What's Melvin Gordon going to be like in that? Even though it's not completely featured back, is it as the primary back at Wisconsin? I saw that it looks like Anthony Jennings is going to be the QB at LSU to start this game at least. How's he going to look? Because like it seemed like they really handled him with kid gloves last year. In the bowl game, I think they just ran the ball every single time basically against Iowa and came out with an easy win there. In addition to that, LSU's basically got new players at all the skill positions, and everybody's excited to see how Fournette does. And Wisconsin's got a new quarterback too, in Tanner McAvoy, who seems like he fits more the profile of what Gary Anderson ran at Utah State. Like this guy seems like he can bring that mobile element that Joel Stave kind of lacked.
yeah. Joe Stave definitely not a mobile guy. Not like terribly slow or anything like that. Just didn't really fit the mold for what, like you just said, Gary Anderson's offense. You brought up Leonard Fournette's name. 5K on Fantasy Elite tomorrow. Does that
Really?
tickle your fancy, Andrew? Yeah, 5K. So
I mean,
even
he's
though
going
I
to be
think
the first.
I would imagine, like I'm not like, but there's some underpriced players here that I think that could really be worthy of a look. Uh, so I mean, I love Fournette. So if he's not the first pick, he should be one of your first three, like easily. I don't think he lasts probably past the 6th or 7th overall pick. Melvin Gordon's only 15K tomorrow.
That's nice too. Corey Clement
I mean, that guy.
right?
Yeah, Corey Clement's like 10. Now I'm not as high on that one as Melvin Gordon, but like
Right.
that's another one or two. You get deeper in the thing, and you have already Melvin Gordon. Maybe you kind of pick Clement as well because he's going to get his carries to begin with, but maybe you want to make sure you don't get any running or touchdown stolen from you. Rashad Green, Florida State's going to put up big points on Oklahoma State. Rashad Green's only 12K.
That's solid, especially considering how unproven the rest of their receiving corps is. And whereas in previous years when it was Manuel running the offense, like it seemed like he spread the ball around a lot more than Winston, who just seems like he loves throwing the green.
Yeah, I think Winston.
So
The way he,
I'm on board with you there for sure.
yeah, and I think that Florida State's going to have some potential there for some value. Looking at it, I already said Green's name. You're looking at some of these running backs, like Pender is going to get a lot of carries, I feel like. See, Christian Green, the receiver, is pretty cheap. He's 8.3K. And see if I can find Pender here. Mario Pender's 5K, the running back. I mean, Florida State is going to start using – they use a bunch of guys on the offense, and they all seem to score. If you remember last year, they did a bunch of that stuff, and it worked out well. What do you think about – like you said the first – obviously Rashad Green has proven a very good receiver for Florida State. We have Christian Green. We have Jesus Wilson. Jesus Wilson. They're unproven. They're not, like, crazy cheap. They're not crazy expensive. Obviously, they're 8K and 7K. Would you consider using like picking them tomorrow?
I stay away. I mean, I know Christian Green was named the starting wideout, but it seems like that was more done because he's been in the program for 4 years than anything he did skill wise. So I think I stay away from FSU receivers outside of Rashad Green.
So you would. But see, the thing is, like these guys are so perfect for like a GPP, but when you're playing fantasy elite, uh, this is. I mean, obviously, clearly, it's a not a GPP type of style of drafting. So maybe in
Right.
a three-man, they become more appealing, but I think you're probably right. At least in terms of Wilson, I think Green a little bit more. I don't want to say proven because honestly, I don't think really any of them, neither of them have proven a whole lot to begin with. But Green, I would probably trust a tad more than Wilson. Mario Pender, do you need to see anything from him to pick him, or do you just think because a good, highly touted running back at Florida State and the way they use multiple running backs is safe enough for you at 5K?
Um, I mean, Carlos Williams is only 9,900, but do we know for sure that Pat is the number two, or do we expect them to kind of switch that up?
Uh, as far as I know, it's kind of Pender and this Green. Is it? There's another Green. How many Greens did the Florida State have? You see that?
I don't know if I go with
I'm
Pender.
looking
I
at
know it's
yeah, Ryan.
I know that Pender is cheap at 5K, but
Go ahead.
there seems like there's a ton of value at running back in pretty much kind of what we've said, whether it be Carlos Williams, Corey Clement, Fournette, um, what's it called, Melvin Gordon at 15 is insane. So I mean, I don't think you'll have trouble filling out your running back requirements based on just who's available value wise. That you necessarily have to dig that deep and go with Pender at 5K. Granted, if you want to get someone like Gurley, you might have to take a chance on Pender, but I don't think it necessarily deems him worthy of a high pick.
See, I really, really like Todd Gurley tomorrow. Like, I really, really think he's going to be awesome tomorrow. But I'm not
Yeah.
like Taysom Hill was a guy I was like easily on board with, and it cost
hmm
he's just a little bit less than Gurley. I don't know if I can get behind that price for Gurley. Can you?
No, dude, that's.
For
I
a
mean,
running back,
for a stud quarterback, I mean, in a perfect situation, yes. Granted, I think this is an awesome matchup for Gurley, just because it's gonna be a really back and forth game, kind of like last year, I think. And I don't see Clemson stopping him, but I see Georgia having to keep feeding him to keep up. So I mean, the situation seems perfect, but even so, in order to get 29K worth of value. I mean, what are we really talking? He would have to go off for like 200, 250, and like three or four TDs just to like really make you say, okay, I feel like I got solid return on him.
exactly. And I think we just kind of discussed with all this value at running back or some underpriced players at running back that you can't really do that. Like I don't think it just seems like a bit much to be doing that. What about quarterback for tomorrow? We're looking at some guys here. We talked about Jennings a little bit. You said, the kid gloves, which I think was a very appropriate statement. He was named the starter today, right? Anthony Jennings?
Yeah, I saw that on Twitter.
Yeah. All right, so just confirming that. Cole Stout, I think this Clemson UGA game, and I told you this already, I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think UGA wins. And Cole Stout at 14K to me is a solid pick because – for one, I don't think Clemson really has named a starting running back ever since I think his name was Brooks got hurt. Um, so do you think Cole Stout could be one of the better QB options at 14K?
I think he's definitely someone to consider. Your main cause for concern there, I guess, is Deshaun Watson stealing time from him, not necessarily stealing the job mid-game or something like that, but I mean, Chad Morris loves getting tricky with his packages. So I don't know if how much faith he's going to put in Stout to necessarily trust him the way he did Taj Boyd. to just constantly do whatever in terms of running the ball, throwing the ball around. So I think that Clemson might come out with a little more conservative game plan than we're used to seeing from them. But that being said, looking at the other quarterback options, um, Winston's really high. You could probably make a team work around him, but you're going to have to do some configuring. The Fresno State situation is completely undecided at this time. I mean, it seems like the kind of thing where they're not going to announce that QB until right around kickoff, and even then, they're going up against a D that in the last time they played, completely shut down Derek Carr in Fresno State. Um, Cody Kessler is really highly priced relative to the slate, I think, and I think it's difficult to count on him putting up the kind of numbers he put up against Fresno last year. I don't know if I want to play J.W. Walsh against Florida State, and I mean he's priced pretty highly as well. Um,
Yeah, I think you really.
but I guess the bottom line there is that I think it's fair that you definitely consider Cole Stout, considering the other options that we have.
Yeah, I definitely. I think Cole is the number one quarterback I'd reach or go for. And I would consider Jameis Winston just because I know that game's gonna have a lot of points, and like we kind of discussed already. Um, I don't know. Hudson Mason, I wouldn't be mad about, but only because Todd Gurley is so good catching the ball in the backfield, like against Florida last year, where he had those nice. I think it was like 3 catches and 2 touchdowns on. So he had a sweet game, and he can do it through the air. Um, One side note that I was just looking up here: did you see that D Hart has 4 or 5 carries already?
Now, does he? How's he doing?
It's like 4 carries, like 20 yards maybe, but it was just kind of funny to see that he ended up starting. And then Nelson Spruce has a touchdown catch already.
Nice.
Nice. Anyways, back to the business here. And Tanner McAvoy, I mean, Wisconsin's offense is never conducive to a quarterback, so I don't think you could even consider rolling him out there, especially for the same price as Cole Stout. Like, I mean, what do you think the chances are of Anthony Jennings, like, being able to, like, given the reins of the offense and not, like, just being, like, super cautious with the play calling?
Yeah, dude, I see them relying on the run game a good amount. Um, Granted, they have like some big time recruits at receiver, but Malaki Dupree didn't even travel. Did you see that?
Who?
They're like LSU super recruit wide receiver Malaki Dupree.
Oh, yeah,
He
yeah, I
didn't even
did see
travel
that.
with the
And
team.
another guy didn't travel as well. Yeah, I saw that. Um, Interesting. A very interesting.
Yeah, so don't bother putting him in as a flyer.
What? I was looking at Oklahoma State's
But I mean,
receivers.
I fully expect LSU to rely on Hilliard.
Yeah. What about some of these receivers for Oklahoma State? Like, I'm not huge, obviously, on J.W. Walsh, but Jawan Seals is 8K, and uh, is Tyreek Hill here? Am
He's
just
not in.
interesting? I was gonna say him too would be an option. Do you think that Oklahoma State's offense can do enough to give a guy like
Yeah,
Seals some value?
we're going to be like a PPR kind of guy, so he's gonna maybe get 3 or 4 catches, but I mean that becomes all the tougher against a great D like Florida State. But I mean, all he needs is one to get you value at 8K, one big one. So, um, I mean, I view him as high risk, high reward in pretty much any game. Maybe even more so in this one. But that being said,
Yeah. Go
I
ahead.
don't. I think he's someone you consider.
Yeah, I think he's more high risk than reward here more now than ever, just because of how good Florida State's defense is. I think the chances of a deep ball getting past him and all that is probably a lot lower than typical. Do you want to move on to this last slate?
You don't want to talk about Uga some more?
I don't want to talk about anything. Okay. Do you want to actually? I wanted to say one thing. Isaiah Jones, the receiver from Florida State, uh, he's on my fantasy dynasty team, and he is out tomorrow. Who's the out for the season? Actually, he's ineligible. And you know that UGA news more than I do. Which two receivers are still out for UGA?
Um,
Isn't it
Malcolm
Mitchell and
Mitchell.
Conley?
I thought I saw Conley was. I thought I saw he was expected to play, but we can look that up. But I'm pretty sure Mitchell's definitely out.
Yeah, Mitchell's definitely out. Check it. Check out Conley. Um, Not bad options, obviously, if Conley's playing. With that, I think Georgia puts up some points. I think both teams put up some points, so definitely some guys to
If
be had there.
if you put a gun to my head for one receiver, I might go with Michael Bennett just because he kind of showed last year's more of a safety blanket PPR type guy that you can count on before, like everybody else on this on Uga, he tore his ACL. But I think assuming he's in the starting lineup, he should be able. He should have a pretty high floor.
Okay, okay. So this last slate of the day is the South Dakota State, Oregon, Southern Miss, Mississippi State, North Texas, Texas, and Washington, Hawaii. One guy to mention that's not listed that we'll have to make sure the stat provider for Fantasy Elite gets in here is Dwayne Washington, the running back for Washington. He's not in here, which is kind of disappointing. I really, really like Washington on sites tomorrow that have him available. Um, What's maybe one guy here? We have a bunch of high-priced guys. Oh, actually, I'm sorry, just two high-priced guys: Dak Prescott and Marcus Mariota. Which one of those two would you roll with tomorrow?
I think both those games are going to get out of hand pretty quick, but I even I just go back to the last game of last year for Mississippi State where Dak put up like 50 points in one half against Rice and just operated as like the goal line back. And I don't know, even in a half, he could. I mean, he could just. It seems like he touches the ball more often than Mariota, which I mean seems weird considering Mariota's such a great player. But I mean, Oregon has a minimum of two great running backs that they can give the ball to at any point. Mississippi State lost their leading rusher, Ladarius Perkins. They've got an unproven backfield. I think it's going to be all Dak all the time.
Yeah, Dak's one of my favorite quarterbacks tomorrow. I was going to say him. Uh, I think he's probably my top player in terms of who's scoring the most points. If you can find some value, I think you obviously have to go with him. It's an interesting situation because you would think with Dak Prescott being so good, uh, you know, such a good fantasy option, you would think that, all right, so I need to get his receiver. I like Jamion Lewis, but it's not that kind of situation. It's one of those, like you said, where he's always touching the ball, he's always running at the goal line. He will throw, obviously, touchdowns, but Jamion Lewis is one of those like bigger play guys. He's not necessarily a PPR guy, so that kind of hurts his value there. Although at 12K, not a bad pick.
I like Jamie, dude.
I
like him
actually
as well.
ended up having him. I actually ended up having him in a lot of my GPP lineups. As much as it, but they're just it's because it's more of a GPP, and I'm banking on Southern Miss is one of those teams that should keep the game like close enough through the third quarter where you get a lot of minutes out of these guys, like pretty much guaranteed. As opposed, to, obviously,
What do you
this
think
Oregon
of
game is going to go ugly.
yeah, but so something that pops out to me is the discrepancy between Marshall and Tyner of 7Gs. That just seems absurd. Like that, and really speaks to Tyner's value in the slate. Do you agree with that?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I think although Oregon's going to score a bunch tomorrow, and I think that it's probably going to be spread around more than in any game they'll play this year, just because I'm sure they're going to try and do a lot of things and try and just get some reps like that. But Tyner's going to easily. I wouldn't want Marshall at 20K, almost 21K. I would want Tyner at 13K.
I think I want Royce Freeman at 8 points.
That just seems too low. It's just a safe pick there, and yeah, I marked down Rice Freeman as well, a guy that really is going to be. We were just talking about him the other day about how good he was. and how he's like one or two plays away from a guy being injured, and all of a sudden now he's in Tymus Tyner's shoes,
Yep.
and he's getting a ton of touches every single game.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm a big fan of him. What do you think about some of these Oregon receivers? Like, I looked at maybe like Darren Carrington. He's like I guess he's their like third receiver, but he's so cheap at 6.4K. Like, don't you think that's kind of an option for Oregon?
Initially, I was assuming that I would type in Devin Allen's name and see him at 5K and maybe bring him up, but he's untouchable at 10 for me, especially since he's not even starting. I mean, I know there was a ton of hype on him in the offseason about how he's like the fastest man alive, but 10K is a lot for that, considering some of the value around him, around that price period. But Keenan Lowe has to be, if we're talking Oregon receivers, Keenan Lowe has to be the one that I'm thinking at 8.6. Just in I would think his floor is higher than the other ones, just because he's the only one with any sort of proven track record whatsoever.
Yeah, yeah, I'm with you there. Keenan Lowe had some very good games last year. Let's see, what did he have in terms of total catches?
It's not much.
Just 18.
It's like 30 grabs, right? But I mean,
it's like 18 catches, 3 touchdowns, though.
Yeah.
But that was when they had Braylon Addison and DeAnthony Thomas was on that team.
Right.
There wasn't a whole lot of time, like of reps for him to be had, touches for him to be had with that offense. And plus, you still had those 2 stud running backs. I mean, it just got really crowded really quick there. What do you think about some of these receivers or options in this Washington game against Hawaii, like Casey Williams and Jaden Mickens?
I have a tough time trying to predict which one of them is going to get touches, if any of them, considering Washington starting a guy who does he have a single rep ever, Jeff Lindquist?
I don't think so.
I mean, I would expect them to definitely ride the running game, which unfortunately we can't get the most valuable piece of in Dwayne Washington. I mean, it is what it is. From flip side of that, though, would you consider the Hawaii quarterback just because of how cheap he is in Aikiga Woosley?
What's the name of that again, Andrew?
The first 4 letters are WOOL. If I try and say the whole name again, it's probably not going to work out.
Yeah, at 11K, I definitely would consider him. I was going to see if you would even bite on that Washington stuff. Like, if it was Siler Miles, a quarterback, I would definitely roll. Maybe Casey Williams at 10K. But I think that the player that you want is on the other side, like you said, Woolsey. At 11K, Washington's defense is not like some amazing, stroke of genius here. They gave up a bunch of points last year to some teams. Illinois scored some good amount of points on them in non-conference, and obviously throughout the Pac-12 they gave up some points. And 11K at quarterback, if you put Dak Prescott and then you go Woolsey, you kind of give yourself a good chance at not having to go a ton of value everywhere.
Exactly, and
and besides QB, I mean.
There's so many good skill players that you might have to, like, they're not minimum price guys, but that you definitely want to own in the slate. That I think you can get in trouble if you try and go too cheap on your skill players, just because you're missing out on so many good options in the slate. Like, basically, a lot of the guys that we've already talked about.
Yeah. It's just this is a fun slate. Honestly, these last 2 slates have gotten more appealing the more and more I look at them, the more I talk to you about them.
In my book, the least fun thing about this slate is that I think the Washington game, it's out in Hawaii, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't have that awesome 1 a.m. start time that Hawaii games used to have. That was the best, man. I miss those days, and I think we should bring them back.
That was like the super appealing thing about Hawaii.
Yeah. The true DGen glory days.
That's like the super, super late sweat. Like the whole theory that, you score more points when you pick teams on the West Coast. When you pick teams from, like, from Hawaii, that's like I'm 100% on that theory. I'm trying to find Southern Miss. I want to find Southern Miss's depth chart. Like, how hard is it to find in this Phil Steele magazine? Let's just go to his.
Did you ever hear? Did
It's
you ever hear that? Did you ever hear that? The Hawaii Lake games used to get a ton of action from all the people trying to chase their
to make
losses
their
from.
money back.
Yeah,
That's terrible. It's
I
so
know. That's why we need to bring
so
that game back.
understandable. That's awesome. All right, so two games we haven't talked about. This Mississippi State Southern Miss. Like, is there anyone on this Southern Miss team that's rosterable at all?
This is such a Zach question.
This is really, we need Zach. Maybe we can phone a friend. But is it, I just honestly I need to know, is it legal to pick a player from a team that didn't win a game last year?
Yeah, I mean that. I think that pretty much sums it up because they've been really atrocious since Larry Fedora left. And doesn't this game have 62 to nothing written all over it?
Yeah, this game has like you said, like 49-3. Like they kick a field goal just so they don't get blanked, kind of thing. Like, and Mississippi State is on the rise. Southern Miss is on the decline. I don't think you can roll anybody in this Southern Miss team. And honestly, it's kind of weird with Mississippi State. We say the 49 points, but I don't know who you would roll with other than Prescott or Lewis. Like Josh Robinson, you said, they lost to Ladarius Perkins. Robinson got some starts last year and some carries, but really he wasn't crazy impressive, so you can't really roll him out there for 12K, not with the options we've already said. And some of these, I don't really see anybody really for Mississippi State receiver-wise that would jump out at you because they have a big, fat potential to go 3 catches, 22 yards kind of thing.
What would you rather do? Would you rather drop P.J. Walker from your Dynasty League team, or would you rather start the South Dakota State quarterback against Oregon?
I mean, how much money do I have to play a DFS with the South Dakota State quarterback?
Let's say 10% of your bankroll.
I'd roll the hell out of some South Dakota State players then. P.J. Walker is a man. He's a man among men.
That was a great win for him last night, dude. I was stoked.
Dude, I can't help but root for a team like Temple. Like Temple beat an SEC team yesterday, by the way. Like, how crazy is that?
Awesome.
But anyways, yeah. This last game we haven't talked about, this North Texas and Texas game. Malcolm Brown is a stud. Jonathan Gray is right behind him against North Texas. Is this kind of like one of those Marshall Tyner things where you're going to roll Gray because he's 4K less and has that just as good of a matchup, or what?
I don't know if I necessarily even roll either of them, dude. North Texas is not a bad team. Like that. I mean, this is just recalling off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure they improved substantially over the course of last year. Got to a bowl game and played fairly competitively in even a lot of their losses. I think there's more than enough value at the running back positions and flex positions in the slate that you don't need to go with Malcolm Brown or Jonathan Gray. Unless you're really feeling one of them. But I'm personally not. I don't think.
Yeah, and I could see myself not rolling anybody from this game. We've talked about this when we talked about the Big 12. David Ash, 21K, is not the kind of quarterback that you roll for 21K. Like, he just doesn't do enough with his legs. And honestly, Texas could be playing these games where they roll out the 2 or 3 running backs and just pound the ball, till they just win against a team like North Texas. And then the receivers, Jackson Shipley is really high priced, 14K for a guy that really hasn't been proven to be a stud. So I can't see myself rolling him. And then the other receivers for Texas just don't really do anything for me.
I agree with you, man.
Let's see what we got here. That's it, man. Do you see anything right here that you want to mention that we missed out on the slate? Do you think maybe give a key to the slate, like finding these Oregon guys that are going to be good value with the big total points score tomorrow?
Yeah, man. I mean, I think for the most part, you're going to want to pound Mississippi State and Oregon, get as many players from those two teams. I mean, it's pretty much stating the obvious, but that's where the most points are going to be scored. And I think that each team has Oregon's probably got at least 5 or 6 guys that are rosterable or better, and Mississippi State, I guess probably a little less, maybe 4 guys, but I mean that's enough to start working with.
Of all these guys that you would roll with the high, like the expensive quarterbacks, like Dak Prescott, Brett Hundley, all the high-priced quarterbacks tomorrow that we'll see, like Jameis Winston, which one do you think you're most likely to roll with tomorrow?
In a vacuum, and I guess probably relative to the slate, I think Dak's the move.
I do too. I have Dak in uh, pretty much all my fantasy aces lineups, which is where I'm playing a ton of my action. And then I see him every time I'm playing a slate tomorrow. This one particularly, I see myself going Dak Prescott. I see myself going these Oregon cheaper players and trying to get Tyner as fast as possible. Uh, kind of like what you just mentioned, to be honest. But yeah, so Sunday we're gonna have a slate for Sunday's 2 games, and I think Monday's 1 game. So that'll be pretty cool to see. I don't think we're gonna be able to get a full video. I don't think there's really a need to. What we'll probably end up doing is maybe give a little Q&A session, maybe set aside like an hour or two on Sunday morning or something, so everybody can check it out and maybe get their questions in. Any final thoughts for tomorrow, or other than Clemson wins by 40 or what?
No, I think you summed it up pretty good in that Clemson should be running off the field scared by midway through the third quarter.
Dude, Gurley, man.
Who do your boys? Who's Virginia Tech at tomorrow?
We play the tribe of William and Mary.
Should be a rough one.
Well, I don't know how to take this comment from people that I've seen on like Twitter and on like Reddit, but people are like, Virginia Tech's great defense against William and Mary's second-ranked defense last season in the FCS, so it should be a really low-scoring game. And part of me is just like,
about that, dude.
part of me is just like, yeah, well, that kind of makes sense. And then part of me is like, wait a second, this is the FCS. Like, is Virginia Tech's offense that bad? But,
nah, dude. I don't think we should exactly say something like that. I think that's a bit extreme.
it'll be interesting.
My parting comment is, outside of Dak, I think J-Man Lewis is pretty much foolproof for tomorrow. I see him getting somewhere between 6 and 8 and a buck 50, and let's say 2 scores.
Do it. Yes, I knew you were gonna go there, Andrew. I knew it. Love it. Yeah, dude, I love J-Man tomorrow. Like statistically, week to week, he's probably gonna get you on some weeks, but tomorrow against Southern Miss, I think this is the one where he gets you like that 6 and 150, like you kind of just said. We will be back. I think we're going to try and make this a regular thing where Wednesday nights and Friday nights we try to roll out here and get you some previews for like the Thursday and Friday games. But as the season progresses, we're going to have Friday games. We're going to have Tuesday games. I think we have like one day in November where there's no games. So if you just stick to the Twitter, Andrew, your Twitter, Andrew P. Katz with a Z at the end, Zach's Twitter and my Twitter, you'll be able to kind of get up-to-date kind of information on when we'll be. Always tweet us if you need a reminder of the time. All right, guys. Appreciate you guys coming out tonight and watching. Good luck tomorrow, and long live Dak Prescott.